Welcome to the Happy You're Here podcast. In this show, we talk about tools, techniques, and ideas to help us live more fulfilling lives. In this episode, we have Ryan Stanley, who is a lifelong entrepreneur. Now he is an author, and he is a life and self-leadership coach. Welcome to the show, Ryan. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the new book that you have coming out?
Sure, happily. Craig, first of all, I want to just create some gratitude to you. And I'm happy that you're happy I'm here. I'm happy I'm here as well. So thank you for having me. Yeah, me too. So yeah, Ryan Stanley. I am a lifelong entrepreneur. I just recently published my first book. It's called Be Patient, Be Present, Be Joyful. A first aid kit for the emotional bumps, scrapes, and bruises of life. It is exactly as the subtitle indicates. It is a quick first aid kit. If you're having a tough day, I am not one who loves to read. I think there's some amazing books out there that will change your life. And so I'm not taking away from the value of important long books as much as I'm just sharing that my brain does not always make it to the end of them. So as a coach for the past, life coach for the past decade plus, I've seen some common themes in my clients and my own self-growth, and my friends and my family, right? And there were some pretty basic, and I don't say that in a belittling sense, but some basic stuff, if you think about it, concepts of patience, presence, and joy, and some of these little things that we can all control, but we don't make the time to, that are holding us back from being the best versions of ourselves.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, so I would love it. If I'm having a tough day, I don't want to sit down and read 300 pages of something that is, that could serve me, but it's really going to take me much longer than I'd like it to, right? So I wanted something that, listen, if I'm having a tough day, or if there's other people out there like me who are having a tough day, you could just pick it up. It was created in two ways. One, that you can read straight through it, and you could probably read it in about 35 minutes. It's intentionally made to be short, and you can take away some step-by-step active things that you can actually utilize every day. But then B, it's also physically made as a first aid kit, to the sense where if let's just say you already read it and you want to pick it up and you're having a tough moment, and at some point you can pick it up. Every single page is literally designed to have something on it that could stand out to you as the message you're supposed to hear today, as some first aid in a moment of stress, as some, there's illustrations, there's quotes, there's highlighted passages from myself. There's, so it's literally, and it's small. For those who are seeing this on video, something you literally can hold in your hand. Ladies, you can carry in your purse. You open it to any given page. At the end of each chapter, there's Band-Aids, which are little type of things that can help you. So it's my, as a lifelong entrepreneur, it was something that I created to serve others, but in an easy way, I suppose.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think that's awesome. That's, there's obviously plenty of books that you could read that are 300 pages long that have a lot of great value in them. So it's cool to be able to fill, potentially a need that, people that have short attention spans. I love reading, and I read a lot. To get me to sit down and finish reading one book without starting 12 other ones is an impossible task. I actually have authors pretty often that I've connected with through the show or just through life that will send me their books to read. And I fully want to read their books, and I love their book, and I'm reading it and I'm like, this is amazing. This is incredible. This has such an interesting perspective on the universe, whatever. But about halfway through, I find myself picking up another book and starting to read that and being like, I got to remember to read that person's book and get it finished so that I can have them, on the podcast or whatever. So maybe I'll be able to read yours quickly. And then
I think so. That's what I will solve that challenge for you, Craig.
Wonderful.
There's something I was going to add. Oh yeah. So my thing is, like, sometimes I'll read, and I don't not like reading. In fact, I love Audible as well. I like listening to good books, but sometimes I'll get, my challenge with reading is that I'll be reading and then like my brain goes somewhere else. Like it's such a great concept that I start thinking about other things.
Sure.
And then I have to read the same page again. And then I start thinking about something else and I have to read the same page again. And then, 5 times I'm reading the same page. And I'm like, okay, maybe we'll come back.
Yeah, it happens to me all the time. Like I journal. My practice at night is to journal and read. And sometimes those things can be at odds because I'm reading and I'm just like, I want to journal about this idea. And maybe I made a sentence of progress in the book, and it spun me off into this entire like journaling prompt, which is not a bad thing. Like that's not to say that's, that's amazing if a book can do that. And maybe one sentence is that profound. And I'm very grateful to have found books and continue to read books that are like that. But it's,
And that's also just adds to the point of journaling, right? It's like, okay, taking what's in the brain and putting it somewhere else so that it's actually becoming a creation and a thought that is not just lost to the noggin or the synapses.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah. Just the constant, flow of thoughts that are coming and going. And I find it helps me slow down. I have a lot of, very restless thoughts I practice a lot of mindfulness meditation, and it's, becomes very obvious, like how many thoughts are just like flowing all the time and spiraling out in different directions. And it's like, they're not doing anything because they're just leading to another thought, leading to another thought, leading to another thought, where when you journal, it forces you to slow down a little bit and actually give some credence to like each thing that you're writing out. And it's cool because it gives you an opportunity to question it as if someone else is saying it. If I have a thought and it's like, maybe a self-talk or something,
sure,
and I go to write it out and I'm like, I then have a moment of that is true or that is not true. And then I can, where if it's just running in your brain, you might have that, let's say it's negative self-talk or something, just spiraling out of control, just whispering that
taking on a life of its own.
Absolutely. Yeah. So journaling is like one of the first things that I always recommend people try to pick up if they're interested in self-improvement or interested in living a more fulfilling life.
Totally. And, with that, there's a concept. So the prologue of my book it talks about being a creator. And the fact that we're all creators and we're always creating something, right? So right now, you and I are creating two men recording an awesome podcast, right? When you wake up in the morning, if you decide to put on blue socks, blue pants, blue shirt, and a blue hat, you're literally creating a man dressed in blue. If you put on peanut butter and jelly on some bread and you put it together, you're creating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? We create words, we create laughter, we create music, we create art, we create businesses, we create conversation. If you put a bunch of words on in your journal and you put a period at the end, you just created a sentence. Right? So we're literally always creating something. The challenge is that we often create, to your point, stress. We create stress, we create anger, we create frustration. And that doesn't mean that that's not valid. It's not valid that you're feeling that way. Your body is creating these things. But the awareness that you are creating them is the first step. So the reason I brought this up as kind of part of our conversation is there's also, I think when we think of something, if we to just leave it there and not write it down, by actually writing it down, especially if it's something that you want to do or want to bring into life or want to manifest, by taking it from the brain, like into the hand and writing it down on paper, you're actually physically creating proof of its potential existence. It's not that it wasn't there from a quantum level from your thought already, but by writing it down, you are adding some emotion, you are adding some physical intention, there's actually some sort of a science behind it that I think I might have read somewhere. I could speak to the details of, but when you physically, in fact, the difference between typing something and writing something, there is a difference. I'm not sure what it is, but
I mean, experientially, I think a lot of us maybe have experienced that. I certainly have, even with like taking notes. Like if I were to take notes in a notebook when I'm in a class, or when I was in classes, I haven't taken a class in a long time, but I would remember that always. And it's funny because I'm writing it down. I'm never going to read that, but the act of writing it down lodges it so deeply in my brain because it's like a physical activity. But when I tried to type my notes, I didn't have that same experience at all. I couldn't remember. There's something innate about writing versus typing, and maybe we just haven't evolved to like for our brains
because the speed.
You and I weren't born typing. Maybe someone that has been raised and they've been typing their entire life, they have a different experience with that. I can remember learning to type, so it's like not a primal experience for us.
Taught at such an early, or just even a natural. Even like when you think about symbols, you think about like going back to the primal concept, like drawing on walls or writing in the dirt, or just ways to actually physically.
We
from
evolved
the brain
alongside of that. Yeah,
absolutely. Never thought of it that way.
Right, new ideas coming out. We're creating.
There we go.
Ideas.
That's a high five.
Yeah, there we go. I love that. Okay, so the book, Be Patient, Be Present, Be Joyful.
Joyful. Yep.
Yes, I see it up here and it says be patient, be present, be joy, and it's cut off the rest of it. It's like be joy. I like that. I like that concept.
I was gonna say you can be joy too. That's not a bad thing.
I like to try to embody that. But how do you get to those being the three kind of like pillars that you're pulling out in the book, and how does that apply and like manifest itself in the book?
So so if the prologue is that we are creators. Right. And we go to the concept of people creating stress and anxiety. Right. So it is a first aid kit for emotional bumps and scrapes and bruises. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling stressed, we'll start with patience. So chapter 1 is be patient. So once we understand the concept that we're always creating, and we often create stress, anxiety, frustration, those type of things. Chapter 1 talks a lot about typically, and not always by any means. In fact, that's probably more what chapter 2 will get into, the other half. But certainly half of much stress is caused by the concept of there not being enough time. People feeling like they're not far enough along in their career, they're late for a meeting, they're whatever, they haven't had the right relationship yet, They're just not, they're sick. They're not feeling better now. Like there's so much stress that can be created from impatience.
Yeah.
People are starting their own business. Before this recording started, we actually talked about, building your business and other people, entrepreneurs building their businesses, and that it takes years often to really get to the point where you're, if you're doing it smart, you can make it through those first lean years of building any business. But it also does take patience and intention, right? But if you spent the whole time feeling frustrated about this not happening fast enough, and these people aren't getting back to me, or whatever your challenges may be,
right,
you are creating impatience, and through that you're often creating stress. And so, in any of these given moments, you can say to yourself, if I wanted to, how could I create patience right now? Right. So if you're able to disregard the challenges that you're spending all your time thinking about, and instead just recognize the challenge that you're being impatient, and ask yourself, a great question of like, how could I create patience right now? How would a patient person behave in this moment?
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
What does patience feel like? And if you're asking these questions from an objective standpoint, and you're literally, how could I create patience right now? What would I feel like if I created patience right now? Your brain wants to answer these questions, right? Because our brains, that's what they do. They answer questions. As long as we're asking the right ones, we'll be moving forward at a more efficient manner.
Right.
So if you're asking yourself things like, what does patience feel like? How would I be behaving right now if I was patient? And you start to create this, and it might not be all day, every day, right? Rainbows and unicorns, but it might be that you start with a minute at a time, and then 5 minutes at a time, and then you start to recognize more often when you're creating impatience, and decide, because now you know from previous experience what it's like to create patience.
What do you think about, I hear a lot about like positive affirmation. I've had people on the show talk about positive affirmation before.
Sure.
And I think a problem that a lot of people have with that and implementing that in their real life, or even starting it or seeing it make an impact, is that, it feels like you're lying, right? Like if it's something that's so counter to your identity, like if I'm stressed, I'm a busy person, and I try to tell myself I am patient, I am calm, like my brain is going to fire up and say, that's a lie, that's a lie, that's a lie.
Totally.
And like some people say, just push through it, just keep doing it. I like what you're saying here about like, okay, maybe I'm not that right now, but what if I were? What would that look like? Because that starts to create that space in your brain to build that identity.
100%. And the other piece to that is, you could say it all day long, but if you're not feeling it in that moment when you're saying your affirmations, it's really only doing, and again, this is my own version, layman's version, but probably a third of the work. You know what I mean? I know that scientifically, but I'm sure there's people that will tell you that like that have measured brain waves or whatever that comes out. In fact, I don't know if I'm assuming you're probably familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza.
I was literally just going to bring that up. I was going to say about, how you have to feel the emotion of it is how you actually, which for someone that is not familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza, do you want to introduce what that idea is just generally?
Sure.
He's obviously he's an actual doctor that does a lot of really objective studies on basically manifesting how our bodies react and how emotion creates our realities. But
listen, I've been in personal development and personal growth for, in some capacity, 30 years, really hardcore for like the past 10, getting better. The last 4 have been, I'm obviously constantly on my journey and growing, but I've been like really dialing into Dr. Joe for the past 6 or 7 months, and it's leveled up my entire life in so many different ways I couldn't even tell you. So this guy is like really he's my hero right now. Somebody asked me recently if I had a mentor, and I said if I did, we don't really know each other in real life, but he would be the guy. Like, he's the guy that I paid the most attention to, because what I like most about him is he takes things like the law of attraction. He takes things like what he says is, I want to demystify the mystic, right? I want to take all these things that we don't really understand and really look at the science behind it. Look at what does your body physically do when you create gratitude, when you create joy, when you create compassion. Like what's the difference? What physically goes on in your body and your brain? What parts of your brain get activated? How does your heart actually change? Because again, he also talks about the different neurons that aren't just in your brain, but are in your heart and in your different energy centers throughout your body. So, and it's not like there's woo-woo angels. And let me just tell you what I heard about one day from a mystic 3,000 years ago. It's like, okay, we took some information based on cultures of thousands of years, but we also took science and looked at what is actually happening. So all that is to say that if he has a couple of books. One of them out there is called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, which is super huge. Second one is called Becoming Supernatural. And so I'd recommend them for anybody out there who's looking to shift.
I have on my desk, You Are the Placebo.
You Are the Placebo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also equally awesome.
I don't know how
anything you can get by this guy. It's a little bit heady. Like if you're not into, there's a lot of science behind it. So you kind of have to, again, I do it all on Audible. So I've had to listen to many of them.
He's got videos and stuff too that make it. He's got some great interviews like on a lot of different podcasts where that's probably the best like introduction level is like, interview with him on a podcast.
It's a little more palatable and understandable.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But what he says is, from a quantum level, right? Our thoughts are literally things. Our thoughts do create waves of energy that come out of our mind. That everybody kind of knows that in some capacity. And so to go back to like, okay, I'm saying I'm calm, I'm calm, I'm calm. But the thought is just a thing. But to your point, if you're then saying, no, I'm not, no, I'm not, no, I'm not, or your energy, even if you're saying I'm calm, is
you're still like
frantic,
holding that. Yeah, exactly.
Totally. It's going to do the opposite. And even if it's not something as clearly as you put it, as calm versus not calm, as opposed to successful or joyful, right? It doesn't mean you have to be miserable or unhappy or feel like you suck at your job. But still, if you're not really feeling gratitude and genuine joy for the outcome that you are thinking about and saying, I am, it's going to take a lot longer. And the gratitude actually, these elevated emotions kind of are almost like fuel for the thoughts to push them out there and onto the quantum field a little bit deeper and bring them back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so from the patient portion to the be present.
Yeah.
How does that tie into each other?
Yeah. So listen, so now you're no longer worried about the future not coming fast enough, right? You've decided to, and real quick, let me also just go back to patience for those people listening. Patience doesn't mean sit around and do nothing by any means. Patience is not sit on my hands and just wait for it to happen. Oh, well. And I think that's the challenge that people have. They feel like, oh my gosh, I have to be patient. What am I being patient for? I don't want to just sit around and do nothing. I've got stuff to do. And so it's like a fight against patience, right? And it's like, well, if you could enjoy the moment, right? And this will lead us to presence. If you can know that it's going to happen exactly as it's supposed to, right? I still have to do my job. I still have to show up to work. I still have to make the phone calls and do the emails and do the work that's necessary. But if I decide for a fact and I'm grateful for the outcome that what I'm choosing to manifest is going to happen at the time it's supposed to, based on all the other factors that I really don't even understand, the billions of factors that are going on in the world with every single human that I have to interact with and all the economies and all these different things, whatever. If you decide that, hey, this is going to happen one way or other, and I am grateful for that outcome, and my job is just to be here and do the work, then that is patience, right? It's not being frustrated or stressed because it's not happening soon enough. It's being grateful that it's happening, right? And stepping into it.
I think that's an important aspect, though, to point out, and just to reiterate for a second, is that there is an aspect of doing the work. Like you can't just sit around and be like, well, give it to me, universe. Law of attraction. Yeah. Like, I'm just gonna manifest this thing. I think that's a misunderstanding about what the law of attraction is. Whatever the framework you want to put around what that is. Sure. Is that I wrote earlier last year. I was in a bunch of debt. I was like sleeping on a sleeping bag in an empty apartment. I was like grateful to have the apartment, but I was like, I don't have a bed. I don't have any furniture. I have no way of affording these things because I've funneled all this money into this business that's not working out. And just being like, I wrote on a piece of cardboard, it'll get better, just do the work. Yeah. And like emotionally connected to that every single day. I just got up and I was like, what is it that I can do today?
Today, right now.
And I can't, build a successful business overnight. I can't fix everything overnight, but I know that if I just put in the work, I've seen enough other people do it, that if I just put in the work every single day or 5-6 days a week, I will get there eventually. And I just gotta, I'm not dying right now, so I'm fine, Might not be perfect, but I'm fine. And I'm grateful for what I do have. Way
better than so many others, right?
Absolutely,
who also end up becoming extremely successful, right? There are people, I always tell people, there are people who have done more with less, right? That's a good way to,
Always.
Yeah. So totally. And when you start, and that's the other thing, so that will tie right into presence, right? To your point. So today, what can I do today? Like, who am I right now? In the grand scheme of things, listen, man, I mean, when you wake up in the morning, there's gravity, there's oxygen, there's sunlight, all here so that you can exist today. What are you going to do with it? Like that is the essential gift of life. Like literally it's heavy, but in a great way. But this right here, this moment where you and I are connecting is a gift. It is like consciousness experiencing itself and we have the opportunity to take that consciousness and do something powerful with it. Not only for ourselves and for those we love, but for those who are surrounded us or are able to witness it in some capacity, right? Mm-hmm. So I always say, listen, decide what you want to be, do something about it every single day, and be the light you want to see in the world along the way, and you can't go wrong. Because in the grand scheme of things, if you're here now, so we'll take it back to presence. I know I keep saying that, but right now, there is only now, right? That's all there ever is. There's, and I'm sure you guys probably talked about this a lot in your podcast, but right, the past is just other nows that we remember, and typically we're not remembering them accurately. A.
Right. Yeah.
B. And then there's now, And then future nows or the future is just nows that we anticipate more often than not based on our past.
Right.
So if we can take just the now and focus on the now and be here now, and people say, what are some tips for that? It's like, recognize what all 5 of your senses are doing. What am I feeling? Can I feel air against my face? What am I hearing? What do I smell? What can I see? Can I recognize beauty in anything? Can I choose to recognize beauty in everything? And if I decided to, and again, that's something that takes practice as well.
Absolutely.
It's like something you hear people say all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, I'd like to.
That's like meditation practice and mindfulness practice, mindfulness meditation specifically, is centered around that, is getting in touch with your senses and what you're currently experiencing. And I think a lot of people have the misconception that like it means that you have to erase all of your thought and not think at all. And I'm doing it wrong if I have thoughts.
I'm judging myself immediately.
Exactly, which is so like, and that's why it can be important to have a teacher, because someone can, sit down and whether it's like a guided meditation on, the Waking Up app with Sam Harris, or it's like actually having a teacher, that can be very helpful, because it's very frustrating early on when you start. It's a very rude awakening to realize how much of your life is ruled by just like completely uncontrolled thought.
Yeah.
And it can be kind of like, oh man, I want to run away from this, but
which then turns into completely uncontrolled habits and behaviors that you don't even know that you're doing, which are then, whatever the word is, like acknowledge it, making those thoughts happen again.
Yeah, right. I think that that's exciting. If you can tap into like an excitement about it, that like I have all this energy flowing around in my head, and now I'm tapped in. I'm aware of it now, and I haven't been aware of it before. And it might seem like a lot, but like that's great. There's a lot of energy going on there. Now I can get to work with it, and I can to redirect that to a sense of awareness of how I feel in the present. And that is how you get into the present, is those 5 sentences.
Who I want to be and the life I want to create.
So much. Yeah.
And when we stop looking at the past, and that's not to say anybody that's had a wonderful life shouldn't celebrate their past life or successes, or we shouldn't celebrate them and continue to grow from them. But, and this is me painting with a broad brush, there's so many people who don't do that. So many people just live in their past and spend so much time looking at it, good or bad, but they're not creating anything new. They're not looking at the future. Anything they are in the future is typically based on the past.
Right. So, trying to recreate an experience that has happened. That's a big thing that can lead to a lot of suffering, or, try to run away from an experience that has happened. Like just clinging so hard to, I don't want that thing to happen again. And everything in my present is, and every one of my anxieties is creating the future. And then you're creating the environment for that to happen over and over and over and over again. And then it starts to reiterate, it's like a confirmation of like, maybe people don't like me, or women don't like me. I see this a lot. I actually have a relationship coach next week that I'm talking to. And, I have a lot of people that I talk to that are like, women, I will never have a relationship with a woman because women just don't like me. Right. Well, if you continue to repeat that constantly to yourself, it's going to continue to stay true, because you're going to find things to support that, and you're going to keep creating that experience. Evidence
of that everywhere. And then you'll say it again.
And then it'll be like, see, I told you. Right. I told you that people don't like me. I told you that I screw everything up. I told you that whatever. And it's like, and then unfortunately, when someone is in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, it becomes much harder to dislodge those thoughts, because you've been having it for so long.
Well, you're literally creating like paths for your neurons, right? Your brain is like, someone explained to me once, like like when you go down a hill on a sled and you kind of carve out like the path. And then when you go back down, it's easy to go back the same sled again, the same path over and over again. That's what happens with these thoughts. Again, Dr. Joe, he says neurons that fire together wire together. So it's our job and our responsibility to start focusing all that energy that you mentioned that is in our head. I mean, once you know that it's not you, like I am not the energy in my head. In fact, I'm not even the thoughts in my head. I am the one controlling those thoughts if I want to be. And I'm the observer, and I could be the quantum observer, and I can say, I want to focus thoughts as often as possible on what my dream life feels like and looks like. And if I think about that and create gratitude for it, it's funny because at that point, I'm then so happy just to be alive right now. It doesn't matter. And then those things tend to, opportunities fall into place. To your point, then those things start to unfold. And then you see that as an opportunity because, hey, I've been thinking about getting this a lot lately intentionally. Now somebody shows up in my life. That's not a coincidence, A, but B, even if let's say it was, actually, technically the term coincidence means two things coinciding. So really it is a coincidence.
Yeah, right.
But, it's not like an accident is probably a better way to say it. But even if it was an accident, you are now, to your point earlier about the person who says girls don't like me, you are now thinking so much about what you want in your life that you see evidence that what you want in your life is coming. You recognize opportunities when you might not have it before. Which is pretty awesome. I would say it's like someone who is an antique collector, or someone who collects a certain type of toys, right? Like certain antique toys or something like that, or whatever. They're the ones who are, because they're thinking about that all the time, and that's their life, and that's what they focus on. They not only have they done the background to have the information, but like they'll be at a store and see something that 1,000 other people would walk right by and just see no value in.
Right. Absolutely. My mom does that. My mom is an antique, like she collects antiques and stuff, and we'll go to a yard sale or something, and she'll pick something out and be like, "Oh, that's worth a couple $100." I walked past and I thought it was a piece of junk. Yep. It's incredible. Yeah.
Totally.
But that happens in life all the time with opportunities and experiences. There's stuff all around you.
Exactly what it is. If you spend, your mom spends your time knowing about antiques as an example. So if other people spend their time knowing about success and joy and love and laughter and connection and empowerment, then that's what they're going to see more often, and they'll see it when other people don't.
Absolutely.
So chapter 2 is be present, right? So if you're here right now, you're not worried about the past, you're not worried about the future, you're just here for the moment of life. Like what? And so then we'll take it back to the prologue. So what would it be like to create a person who is present? How would a person who is present behave? If you find yourself worried about what someone else somewhere else thinks, or something I might have said 2 weeks ago, an email I might have sent, or maybe that this isn't going to happen in time in the future. If any of the stuff is giving you stress or anxiety, right? And your body is physically telling you, I don't like this.
Right.
We feel like life is happening to us. Instead, when we recognize that life is happening for us, and we can be right here, right now, to appreciate the moment. And again, that takes practice as well. But once you start to do it more often, man, those moments become so beautiful, so powerfully wonderful. It sounds like, even hearing myself say it, I feel like, I might have heard people say that before in the past and not necessarily fully understood it. But
it's so strange to. I had a very big awakening last year of like, I felt like I've been practicing meditation for a long time, but like I was very much like, I don't know, not open, I guess. I wasn't really, I felt like I thought I was open, but I really wasn't. And then, I just had this series of experiences of being like profoundly present, and the universe just laying things out for me in very like kind of funny, humorous ways, like these coincidences that would happen that just kept happening at such a frequency that it was like, it can't be a coincidence that this is a coincidence like this. Right. And even if it is, that's amazing. That's incredible. I love this. Yeah. Like this is amazing. And it starts to make you realize like, wow, everything is amazing. Like, and I would hear people say that and think, wow, that's dumb. Right. Or like, that's
is it really though? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, but this and this and this and this and this. And then like, like I obviously, people have had it way worse than me. I've had it way worse than a lot of people though also. Yeah. And if
everybody's on their unique journey. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And I literally 6 years ago was sleeping on pavement in Pittsburgh, staring at my change in front of me on the pavement, not able to move because I was so drunk. Yeah. And like that was my life at one point. Yeah. And I've had all kinds of ups and downs since then, but like being able to say like everything, just the fact that I am sitting in a room right now talking to, first of all, this is incredible, being able to talk to people over the internet. Like there's so many things to be grateful for that it's just insane. The fact that the universe even came together to create these breathing conscious beings that we are, like that's incredible. Like there's just so much to be grateful for. And if you choose to say, what would it be like if I was someone that's grateful for this kind of thing?
Totally.
It's so
crazy how create gratitude.
Yeah. And that starts to create joy.
Totally. In fact, once you're present and you're patient, all of a sudden, often joy will sneak in right behind it. Mm-hmm. In fact, that's actually, I think there's a line from the book in there, something like that. But yeah, so then chapter 3 is be joyful, right? So if you're here now, you're not worried about the past anymore. You're not worried about the future anymore. It's okay. And again, I don't say it's okay. Who am I to judge what anybody does, right? But I'm just saying from my experience and the presentation of this book would be that it's okay to think about the future and really to plan it with what you want it to be. It's just not to worry about the future doesn't serve you. But in any case, if you're here now, you're not worried about the past or the future. You're enjoying life. How would you rather be feeling? Joy is a great place to start, right? I mean, what would it be like to create joy just for life itself? And that's another thing that I've been, so again, a lot of stuff I've just been doing with Dr. Joe is sitting in, if you hear people, just be happy for life itself. Like it sounds almost cliche, like this weird thing that I didn't think I could actually get to, right? I really didn't. Like, okay. In fact,
it's
even now,
it's a hard thing sometimes to explain. Is like once you get there, to be like, wait a second, how did I like? If I heard someone say that a year ago, or 3 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, I would have thought they were crazy. I would have thought like, oh, good for you for thinking that. Like, you know,
exactly.
You don't really see what life's really all about. Like that's what I used to think. And then once you're there, you're like, how could anyone not see how amazing this is? But also then it's trying to bridge that gap of connecting with people that maybe are not seeing life that way. I think is, you know, valuable to think about of how do we bridge that, you know?
One of the most fun parts of my personal kind of spiritual awakening and journey has been that, again, like, you know, I always feel like I'm at a point where this sounds ridiculous, but I'm reached the peak or whatever. I just got a level. Like, this is it. Like I got it. Now I got it all figured, right? And then I level up at some point just by experiencing life and kind of going through whatever. But when that happens, like I'm always like you hear, like to your point, you'll hear an expert out there or a guru or just somebody who's just had a lot of life experience in this area speak about different levels of you know, the now or just being grateful for life, these different things. And you feel like you get it. Like, oh, yeah, I get that. Like, no, I totally get that. Oh, affirmations, yeah, I get. And then all of a sudden you get like, this is what he was talking about. Oh, sorry. I heard that like 7 years ago, and I still, like, really not until now did I really realize what you were
I just had that happen recently with non-duality. Someone discussing, you know, that the idea of separation is an illusion, right? That we live in this dream of like separation and all of this stuff, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, that sounds like nonsense to me, or I don't understand it. I would like have this visceral reaction of like, that's not true because of these reasons. And then through just like a series of experiences and just greater understanding, realizing like how that is true. Maybe I don't agree with the way they explained it or something, but like, that's fine. And it's just like, oh, and then you're like, yeah, this is a really profound level of understanding. I can't believe I went my whole life without getting this.
Yeah. But, and then the more, like, sometimes it's funny. So this past weekend, my brother was over and we were sitting on my deck and my wife was there. The three of us are just kind of hanging out, relaxing. And I just, every once in a while, I just be like, man, I just love whatever. I just love my deck. Man, I just love fish. I'm a big fan of the band Fish. We were listening to some Fish. I was like, man, I just love Fish. Like, and like, so throughout, my brother was there for a couple of days. And so throughout the weekend, every once in a while, I would just literally be sitting there and I'd just be like, man. And as soon as I said that, like, they were like, oh, here it comes. What do you love now? I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, what's not to love? Like, you know, it's this funny place. Once you feel, and really what it comes down to, this is not to even just sound hippy dippy. Like, once you practice creating love intentionally in your heart, like that's the practice, like that I've been working on really hardcore this year. And once you practice that so often, your body starts to actually do it on its own for no reason except for that you exist. Like, it's like this weird, it's like the having it actually happen on its own and then feeling it and feeling that joy and love for life, almost like you didn't create it. You know, that's like, I think that's where the magic happens. And that's when you start to say, oh, like, okay, this is just like, this is an option. Like, this is there's an option just to love life for the existence, for life itself. And once you start to do that, you start to appreciate other people's lives and other people's experiences on a whole different level. And you have new levels of empathy and understanding to where you can, it doesn't matter how they're behaving because whoever they are is exactly who they should be based on every single second of life they lived up until this moment. And my responsibility is to be the light that I want to see in the world in that moment and see how it is reflected.
It's so contagious. You know, I talk about that a lot, about how, you know, be the light you see in the world. People say that a lot. And that's such an important concept. I think that it kind of gets lost for a lot of people in the kind of like, you know, woohoo-ness of that phrase, right? Yeah. But in a very practical way, if I go about my life expressing joy and love and gratitude and empathy for people, that affects the people and interactions that I have. And in turn, like, where did I got that idea and those experiences from someone else that was having those ideas and experiences and sharing them and being brave and outward with those experiences, which once you get to a certain point, it's like impossible to contain yourself.
Right. It's like, I've just seen the truth. It's the truth.
Yeah. And then you have the other side of things where, you know, you have negativity and pessimism and hatred and exclusion and all of these things. Those things are also contagious for the people that there's like most people live somewhere in the middle of those two things. Yep. Everyone exists somewhere on that spectrum, and it's kind of a weight that it's an energy and a wave form in and of itself, that like that light or that darkness that exists in each of us. And it's really which one we decide to feed with all of our intentions, our thoughts, all of this different stuff. And then the experiences that we have are reflected in all of the people around us in a very practical way. Like, you don't have to get into quantum physics even, or the spirituality of it.
Yeah.
Like, exactly. Like, you can see how that practically is true.
Yeah.
Which is exciting, because once you start to realize that, it's like, oh, there is inherent value in working on yourself.
Right. I can get something out of this. In the grand scheme of things, whatever I want to bring about in my life, whether I'm spiritual or not, if I focus on that, right, then that's what I'll get.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now you throw in some spirituality, some gratitude in the meantime, and it can't hurt, right?
Sure,
Then you're going to get that too, right?
It's funny because it seems inevitable that that's going to seep in some way, just because you start to realize how much you don't know, and how much of what you thought was reality is just so wrong, that it's like, okay, well, all of this other stuff that I just wrote off, maybe I shouldn't just write it off.
Yeah, maybe there's an opportunity for growth. I'm working on, actually I say that, but the concept for my next book, I have the title and the concept, and that's it. So the title is Mind the GACC, and the GACC, which is capitalized GACC, stands for Great and Constant Conversation with the Universe. So
nice.
For me, like, the expression mind the gap, which is, I don't know if you've in Europe at all. Yeah, mind the gap, right? So this is mind the GACC. And so the GACC is this concept that we are, when we speak, when we talk, when we think, and life responds to us. Like, it is not just to be a response. It is also for me then to respond with gratitude. And the more I start thinking about something, when I see that it is showing up for me physically, in physical form in life, for me then to recognize it as a form of conversation from life, from the universe, and now I create gratitude for it. I am then I'm retorting to the conversation, right, that the universe has created, by putting out this energy of gratitude. And then then it says, oh, you like that? Okay, I heard what you said. Let me give you more things to be grateful for. And then you start to create gratitude. And it is this back and forth. It is like acknowledging, even if it's just acknowledging your favorite number when you see it, or acknowledging different things that you pop up, whatever. For me, that's the GACC. Like I always say, I just had a really gacky moment right now. Something just happened. But it is this whole concept of creating and receiving.
I think that, when you are writing that book, let me know, because we'll stay in touch, and I would be excited to read that.
Yeah, to say the least.
We've just, talked about so many exciting things. And like you said, we're having this, literally like voicing this and putting this out into the universe in our own experiences. And the great thing about creating like podcasts or whatever is that this content then reaches other people. Even if it reaches 100 people, that's, that is being the light you want to see in the world. And
who knows who those 100 people are going to talk to based on this, and then, or where they're going to get more information or whatever. And to be honest with you, it's like now, like this podcast can be heard for thousands of years, whatever. I'm just saying, so literally in the grand scheme of things, if we think beyond ourselves, we think whatever, when historic people right now, people look at the Aztecs, what were they writing? What were they saying? What were they doing? Whatever. It's like, listen, okay, we've got this digital content from these people back in 2020 when this pandemic was going on. What the heck were they talking about?
But books too, like writing a book. I think that even probably has a longer longevity than most other, especially when you have it physically printed. Who knows? Like when you're an old grandpa and you die and like your grandkids are going through your stuff, they're going to find that book. I have a journal from my great aunt's son. That's a physical thing. Like it's incredible that, something like that. And who knows, maybe it'll go to a dump and no one will ever see it. But, like to your point, you're communicating with the universe constantly.
That was part of my in writing this book. Like, I mean, I'm just not a regular author. I haven't like dreamed of being an author my whole life. It wasn't like, like I said, I don't even like to read a ton of books, right? But it was just something I was like, okay. So I've got a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I was like, okay, so this is something that I can also leave them, they can have whenever they want to, and maybe their kids can have, and maybe people long after I'm gone will find it. The right, I believe when we talk about not caring what other people think and being your true self and uncovering, the being that is within us and allowing it to really express itself as often as possible, I think we will attract others that are looking for that or need that or is part of their vibe, right? And so this book, I know for a fact it's for whoever it's for. And so just knowing that it'll find the right people when it's supposed to and how it's supposed to in itself is like, my work is done here. I'm the co-creator. And that's the whole concept of life. Like, we are the co-creators. We create what we want if we intentionally think about it, and then allow this, the higher intelligence to do the rest. But if we add gratitude and love and compassion for what we're doing and for others, it's a win-win.
I think it amplifies it, but I mean, even if it doesn't, like whatever,
probably better way to say
the experiences that I want to continue to have. So thank you so much, Ryan. If someone on that note is interested in picking up your book, or learning more about you, where can they do that?
So first of all, I mean, book is everywhere. They sell books, as they always say. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on barnesandnobles.com, whatever. You can find it anywhere like that. It's also for sale on my website. My website is ryanstanley.com. That's R-Y-A-N.
It's right there.
Yep, right.
If you're watching the video. If you're not, then I just pointed. He has his website in the
ryanstanley.com. And so you can buy a book from there. If you do, it'll come from me. It'll come signed. So that's depending on my availability, which is starting to get less and less, but it might come with a complimentary session as well. But then also, listen, man, I mean, I understand that COVID has been it's been a weird year for a lot of people, and not everybody has extra cash that they feel like spending on books. So if you want to right now, especially during COVID, you can get the book for free in like a PDF format. And so you just go to ryanstanley.com/free-ebook. And then you just download the PDF and you can, I mean, obviously, if you have the cash, I really prefer the physical copy. It's something small you can carry with you. You can take notes in it, that type of thing. It's quick and easy. It's a little bit more fun than a big PDF to print out and carry around. But I guess you could look at it on your Kindle or whatever. But yes, so ryanstanley.com is just a place, and you can find all my social spaces.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I think we had such an amazing conversation here.
Yeah, man.
Again, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, I feel like we could talk for hours, but people have to go on with their lives and go build the lives that they want to build. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, man. I really enjoyed the conversation as well. Thanks for sharing some time and space with me.